Hello, everyone, and welcome to the eSkill webinar, How to Leverage Skills Tests to Upskill Employees. We're going to get started. We are thrilled to have our speaker with us today, Kelly Painter. If you could adjust the slides. So again, welcome to the webinar. The question that we're asking today is your company struggling to keep up because of staff who don't yet have the skills that you need to compete? It is a fast-changing world out there. And are you struggling to find the best candidates for your roles? 65% of CHROs say that upskilling and reskilling is their most important priority. It just tells you how hard a job market it is out there. 60% of companies believe that they do not currently have the skills in their workforce to be successful. And 2 times companies that invest in skills development are twice as likely to improve retention. 79% of learning and development professionals agree that reskilling employees rather than hiring new ones reduces costs. So there's a huge demand. And there's a huge amount of data that shows that upskilling and reskilling is critically important to having a competitive workforce. So today in this webinar, you're going to learn what can happen when 2 great companies work together to deliver an easy upskilling methodology. eSkill has partnered with SkillDirector, next slide please, to deliver some advanced technology to help with companies like yours with upskilling and reskilling. And we are thrilled to have Kelly Painter with us today. She is the former Chief Revenue Officer for eSkill and the CEO of SkillDirector. And our companies work together to deliver great results on behalf of our clients. She's led HR assessment technology companies for more than 20 years. She is a solutions architect for small companies, clear up to global multinational companies, to help them with their talent management and hiring and retention of great employees. She develops teams through coaching and training and creates strategic growth strategies, both herself and with her amazing teams. She finds and allocates the right resources through great talent. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Kelly. And again, we are thrilled to have you with us today.
Thank you, Sheila. What a great introduction. So thank you everyone for attending today. This has always been really near and dear to my heart around, how do we upskill the current workforce? And over the last probably 3 years coming out of COVID, we've all talked about how do we leverage the skills in organizations and how do we do it within the scope of traditional hiring, onboarding, training practices, traditional learning and development practices. So as I've moved from eSkill this last few months to SkillDirector, one of the things that we've been able to do is really think through what is the right resource for being able to upskill any workforce from 10, 15, mid-level managers all the way through entire organizations, and how do we do that to scale? So putting these 2 very well-known organizations together was just, it was an easy thought process for me to be able to put this as part of a solution to one of the clients, and it just kind of took hold. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like today. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk through was give you just a little bit of background and some understanding. As companies were thrown into COVID and trying to understand where are we in this entire process? What are we trying to do with our organization? So Josh Burson, I think, did an incredible job of being able to formulate how organizations responded and then how they started to come out of that response and how they continue to either be in survival mode or continue to grow and think about how do we become more nimble should anything economically or through any kind of pandemic or any kind of global crisis occur. How do we take care of our employees, but also how do we grow and thrive in any situation? So he came up with these 4 levels, from the very basic of let's take care of people. Let's try to save the organization. We go into full survival mode, and there you saw a lot of that happening, especially depending on the industry. Then we get into let's take care of all of our people, let's keep them safe. right? And then we get into how do we change the organization fast enough to be able to address the crisis, to how do we reinvent ourselves to come out of this stronger than we were before. And that's one of the things that has, we saw right after COVID, people not wanting to go back to work. They wanted remote employment. They wanted more flexible schedules. They wanted more time with families. So as that job market started to shift, so did employers start to shift their focus. So then it comes down to when there is scarce talent out there, or we don't have skills, because skills are changing all the time, right? If you think about the jobs today, and you think maybe 5-10 years ago, those jobs didn't exist. The skills required for those jobs didn't exist. And that's what is happening now with ChatGPT and AI and machine learning. These technologies and these skills will move even faster. And I think that's where a lot of organizations are, is how do we identify what skills we do and don't have in an organization? And it's one of the things that we've talked about at eSkill for years, is we do a really great job of being able to understand someone's skill set as they're entering the organization. But then what do we do when they're in the organization and we need to now upskill them? How do we identify what are those skills that that particular person has, and how do we direct that learning that is going to target those skill gaps? So that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. All right, so as we talked about, there are some challenges going on in the world today. Organizations have been asked to address rapidly changing business environments, right? So you have things going on in the world that completely disrupt the economy. We have new technologies completely disrupting how business gets done, all right? There is a lot of automation happening. And I read, and if you haven't spent any time reading about how artificial intelligence and how it changes jobs, but it changes jobs in a different way that people don't realize, is we automate the simple things, right? We can automate a lot of simplistic activity that are repetitious and that can be taught and learned, and that frees up people to do other things that are more strategic and more impactful. And that's really where we start to think about, how do I recraft a job and how do I get people skilled up so they can take on that greater responsibility and take some of the regular task off of their plate, right? Great. So we talk about how skills are required to successfully execute certain strategies. If the CEO of your organization comes and says, hey, for 2024, we're going to do these amazing things. We're going to do A, B, and C. And you sit back as learning and development or HR, and you say, okay, well, we don't have skills for that right now. How do we go and close that gap? Do we hire people? Do we upskill who we have? Do we even know what skills we have internally that we could capitalize on? Do we have people sitting hidden in certain teams that are a huge resource for that team? Could they be a huge resource for the entire organization, but we don't have that career visibility available, right? One of the interesting trends over the last few, probably a couple of years, but it's bubbling up to the top more and more, is lack of career development and lack of career visibility for individuals. They want to see where they could go in an organization. And without that clear visibility, they'll go down the street because somebody's going to sell them on the idea of career visibility in an organization, okay? And then creating learning opportunities for all employees is critical in order to achieve upskilling metrics, right? You have to understand where are there opportunities to improve people's skills, right? And oftentimes I see a lot of learning and development teams, they'll go in and assess a specific group of people for specific skills, and maybe more generically. So then they take that information and they create some training programs, or they provide learning and development opportunities. But when you apply it across the entire group of people, there might be a group of people, a portion of that group that doesn't need to attend training. Right? They've already mastered those specific skills. They did really well on the assessment. So are we going to have them sit through training, right? Okay, so these are some challenges, and there's not an easy fix. I will tell you that every organization that I talk to about pre-hire, about onboarding, about training, learning and development, closing skill gaps, everyone is unique in some way, right? We can apply different principles or similar principles across all of those solutions, but every solution is going to be a little bit unique because the leadership buy-in is a little bit unique, the culture is a little bit unique, the locations and the centralization of resources is a little bit unique. So that's why I really like to spend some time understanding how can we build something that is applicable and can capture those nuances of those unique pieces of organizations that we can really provide a custom solution for them. Okay. So one of the things that I have learned very quickly is HR and learning and development are not always on the same page, right? They have very different goals in an organization. And so this is an idea around how do we help both of these organizations come together to create this important skill upskilling process. HR does a fantastic job of defining the roles, right? But sometimes it's not really clear about what are the specific skills that drive performance in a particular role. We know exactly what they do, but we know what skills are required for someone to come into the job, but we don't necessarily know which of those skills are really driving performance in any particular job. So HR defines that role. They use job analysis to determine the basic skills needed to enter the role, right? I need to know, do you need to know Excel? Do you need to know how to turn on a computer? Do you need to know how to work a web conferencing system? Right? Those are the three key areas. Can you communicate effectively, either written or verbally? So if I know those are the basic skills, I'm going to go out and hire individuals for these particular skills. So I use those to develop and performance reporting and fine tune those skills as we see success as people come on board. Learning and development, on the other hand, when they're going to assess individuals, what we're trying to do is have them target information, create behavioral examples. If I say that somebody should have a skill at this level on a competency model, I need to create some examples around what that looks like, right? If I say somebody is an expert Excel user, what does that look like? What are the skills or what are the specific examples of somebody being an expert level? Okay, and that's sometimes the challenge is people don't agree on what is beginner, what is intermediate, what is expert level. eSkill does a great job of defining that level of question and knowledge, but sometimes when I'm assessing myself, I might say, of course I'm expert. I can use all the things that I know how to use, but there's a whole segment that I don't know how to use and I don't even access. So in my mind, I'm an expert, but in reality, I'm probably intermediate, okay? So we want to connect those skills. Now that I understand my learning pieces, I want to connect those to learning opportunities. So if I'm closing my skill gap on Excel, because I'm only really at an intermediate level, then I need to know where to go, where specifically to go to close that gap, right? And that's where SkillDirector comes in to act as that hub, all right? So learning and development can assess those individuals fairly clearly, attach that to learning opportunities and be able to create targeted development plans for each person. Okay. Hope this is making sense or resonating a little bit. When I look at an upskilling model, very simplistically, I need to understand, and all of your employees need to understand, and I get this question a lot from people coming in from other organizations, is I'm not really sure what's required of this from me of this job, right? I kind of know what I'm being measured on. Maybe I'm being measured in a call center. It's easy. They know exactly what they're being measured on. The metrics are being managed fairly consistently and very completely. In other jobs, in other industries, people don't really know. They get their annual performance review and they might say, somebody might say, oh yeah, your communication needs to be better, but we don't know what level it's supposed to be. So what SkillDirector has done a fantastic job of doing is being able to align your competency model, being able to very quickly and very easily create a competency model that identifies tasks and behaviors that are associated with certain levels. So if I'm assessing myself, I can very clearly see these are the behaviors I exhibit. So this is the level I'm at. Secondarily, then we have this assessment. All right, we're able to assess our skills and understand what level we're at. And then from that, I am pointed to very specific learning objectives or learning options. All right, I know where I need to close my gap. I know where my gaps are. I know exactly where my learning content is, and it'll take me right to that. So it's a very nice, easy way to say, I have a competency model, I assessed on the model, I identify the gaps, and I'm pointed directly to the learning to target that gap, right? So very easy process, and it becomes a very simplistic way of being able to provide personalized learning for individuals, okay? And what we've done now is add the eSkill piece, right? So we've added what we call a knowledge test, which is where eSkill has provided an expansive library to connect with the self-assessment. So I can identify where I believe that my specific skills are at. The manager assessment, I need the manager to be able to say, yeah, I see Kelly doing that every day. Okay, and then I can have peer assessment. I can have a field trainer. I can have peers or customers say, yeah, I see her at this level. Okay, so we have some really good subjective observations that we can add as part of that evaluation of the skill set. But then we can also add that knowledge piece is where eSkill comes in, is a confirmation of what that knowledge level is. Is it beginner? Is it expert? Right? Again, it's all a point of reference. So I have a really nice combination of these assessment inputs that allow me to clearly identify where is my gap. Okay. All right, so your takeaways here are we want to make sure that we define a competency and the skills required for each role. All right, you may already have this done with job descriptions. We would just make sure that if you're thinking about how do I upskill, do we know where somebody is right now? Do we know what skills they'll need in the future? And there is an opportunity in looking at career development. If I'm really good at my job and I have mastered all of the current skills that are in my role, then I am ready to go look at other potential skills. Or maybe I learned some skills myself. I had some extra time in the afternoon, so I started teaching myself a specific system software, or maybe some marketing skills, or maybe I jumped on LinkedIn Learning and I acquired some additional skills. Well, no one in the organization is going to know that unless I have it housed somewhere. So I want to make sure that we're capturing those. So we assess the current skill level. We use behavioral examples. We use knowledge questions. We identify each person, each team and organization. I know exactly where the gaps are, and I know where to provide that learning. And I know I can do it at the individual level, or if I see that an entire team is really challenged in a particular area, I can go ahead and create some learning opportunities for the entire team. Okay. And then if you think a little bit more macro around, okay, our strategy for next year is to go to complete digital communication. Well, if you have a few people or half of your organization that's never actually used web conferencing or doesn't even know how to access SharePoint, that might be a challenge. Okay, so it's a very simplistic example of understanding how you're going to deliver on the strategy if you don't understand the skill set that you have now that will drive that strategy. Okay, if you understand that you clearly don't have that skill set in your organization, then yeah, maybe it's time to go out and hire, or maybe it's time to offer learning opportunities within the organization. There might be some individuals that would be ready or thrive if you gave them an opportunity to be able to add an additional skill to their toolbox. Right, then create individual learning development plans for their current roles and their future roles. Right, it's always a good idea to let people know what's going to be required of them if they start thinking about a longer term future with your organization. A lot of people think that they've been here for a certain period of time and they feel like they've mastered this current role, so they're ready to move forward. But there's nothing other than their feeling that is telling them that, or a timeline. I've been here 6 months, I'm ready for a promotion. Right, I'm pretty sure everybody on this call has probably heard that. One of the challenges with that mentality is there's no concrete evidence for themselves or for any feedback from their manager, because maybe it's not their annual performance review time yet. They've only been there 6 months. Do they truly know how they're doing in this current job? And do they know where their skill gaps are? And do they know what's going to be required at the next level? Okay. And then regular reporting on the progress of the development activity. It's how many of you figuratively show your hands, or even think about the last time that somebody created a development plan and how often it was they went back and reviewed it. And I'm guilty of this. We go through this massive project planning, get everyone's development plan ready to go, and then we basically brush our hands together, pat ourselves on the back and say, whew, got that done, see you next year. Okay, we'll check on their activity and their development progress next year. And instead, we should do that either on a monthly or quarterly basis. I worked with an organization that did it quarterly, but it was interesting as they had 5 key core elements and they only focused on the financial one. So I always thought that was interesting. They went through all of the trouble of creating massively detailed development plans, and they only checked on one. They only checked on the progress of one. And so we want to make sure that we're looking at holistically what's important for the organization. And then manager engagement with the progress and coaching for visible skill improvement. If someone is doing really well at improving specific skills, we want the manager engaged to understand what are they working on, how is it going, giving them feedback. You know, part of most job descriptions for managers include coaching and developing the people that work with them and work on their teams. And so I always find it interesting when managers say they just don't have enough time to get in there and manage their individual people. Well, at some point you have to figure out, is that really part of their role or should that be somebody else's role? Okay. All right. So hopefully the takeaways are not, I didn't over explain each one of them, but essentially is understanding what is required for the job, understanding where the individual is in the skill set that's required for that job, identify those gaps and put them on a development plan that targets those gaps. And that's really what we're trying to do here. We also love data. I am a data junkie, so for any of you who have ever interacted with me, throw a spreadsheet at me and I'm pretty much lost for the rest of the day. Luckily at SkillDirector, somebody built them before I got there. So we have some wonderful dashboards where we show clients where some of the, obviously sales is always easy, right? We always have a quota tied to that, but we also do this for IT as well, and some other parts of the organization in some larger organizations where we manage entire skill sets for entire populations. Essentially, we want to understand what are these key skill areas where people may be struggling, and just monitoring and managing that one skill improvement could mean an incredible difference in revenue. Okay, and let me give you an example. So we just had one client did a report. We looked at the skill development for a global sales team. So we found that there was one specific skill that everyone meeting quota was really good at. So we just took a look at that one skill and we said, okay, we have about 400 people that haven't met the minimum expectation for that particular skill. So we said, okay, what if we just improve 25% of that group in that one skill? That was an additional $8 million in revenue for that organization. So we did two things there. One, we were able to clearly understand the impact of identifying which skills are most important, and two, understand the impact of just improving a small portion of those individuals in that one particular skill. That's very different than taking a group of low performers and trying to get them to improve in a particular area. It is really targeting, let's just work on this one skill and let's see what we can do and the biggest impact that we can make. And if you could do that across all the sales managers that were managing these individuals and said, let's really focus on that, then we would have an easy way for, instead of having, hey, I need you to start coaching your low performers, instead it is, hey, let's focus on this one skill. Let's give them the resources from learning and development. Let's really understand what is driving this and how do we make this better. And I'm not even saying I had to improve 100% of them. Only 25% was an additional $8 million. Okay. All right, wonderful. All right, so these two companies together do a phenomenal job of being able to provide an incredible solution from pre-hire recruitment. I've always been a huge proponent of eSkill providing a really robust, configurable platform that delivers over and over and over content to be able to screen effectively candidates. All right, whether you're asking one question or 200 questions, it is a great platform to be able to do that in all kinds of forms and fashion, right? Multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, essay questions, simulations, just an incredible platform. So if we take that and we pull that into how do I close a skill gap? Well, I need to understand what the skills are. I need to understand where the gaps are and who has those gaps. And then I can work that into really understanding how do I make an impact on the organization by closing those skill gaps. Okay, so I hope this was helpful and I hope I wasn't too long-winded around this. I think that there is some really good opportunities across any organization at this point to try to upskill and improve skills across the employee base rather than going out. I could spend a whole nother webinar talking about how do we, once we know what those skills are, how do we leverage them across teams? You know, how do I take Joe's expert level Excel and provide that skill across all of my teams instead of just one team? How do I assign projects? How do I engage people differently? How do I turn performance management on its head, right? So there's all kinds of things that we could do around reinventing an organization and how it manages talent. And this is one of the key elements, is really understanding what skills does your talent have and what skills do they need for your organization to be able to make that adjustment and become more agile. All right, wonderful. Thank you all for giving me some time today. I think, Sheila,
Thank you, Kelly.
Questions.
That was fantastic. We have a couple of questions. If you could go back to the Burson slide towards the beginning.
Sure.
There's a question around how to leverage this kind of model across an organization. You've used examples of frontline workers, you've used examples of managers, that kind of thing. And if an organization is trying to go from level 1 up to level 4, which is really what the market demands these days, how would an organization think about applying this upskilling and reskilling at each of those levels to get to transform and reinvent?
Beautiful question. And there is one simple answer, and then there's one complex answer. The simple answer is you have to get leadership, and I mean executive leadership, to buy in, right? You have to have that support to be able to understand how difficult or easy this kind of transformation might be. Okay, if you have a very conservative leadership, then getting to level 3 and level 4 might be a little bit more difficult and challenging, because you're going to have to sell them on the idea that that transformation is required for survival, right? If they're only in survival mode at level 1, maybe level 2, we're going to take care of our people, right? That's a very conservative mindset. You gotta get them to think outside of that and start thinking about where are the opportunities for your organization if we start to move to level 3 and level 4. So leadership is first. Secondarily is I am watching a former client go through this transformation, and it was very expensive and very time consuming, but they didn't get the buy-in at any level. It was just this basically process that everyone was going through without understanding where was this getting us to. So at the end of I think 16 months, they've scrapped the whole thing. So it is really understanding, like, what is the goal? Where's my leadership buy-in? And everyone has to be bought into, this is the idea that we're trying to get to. But if you don't make it part of the culture, none of this works. Okay.
The wonderful thing about the teams, both at eSkill and SkillDirector, is that there's a team to help you think through the change management of that, in addition to the logistics of implementing this kind of model. Can you talk about how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So my start in this industry was around customer service and thinking through how do I make every experience as me providing a solution, how do I make it easy for a customer? So as I have worked with eSkill and now working with the SkillDirector team, that is the one thing that I want to make sure that we are focused on, is how do I make this easy for the customer? So when we create this idea and this solution, that we are perfectly capable of being able to support every aspect of that. And I know HR is busy. I know learning and development is busy. So the minutia of being able to say, okay, I have to get a list of everybody that's going to be included in the project, and I have to get their managers, and I have to get a competency model. We take all of that heavy lifting off your plate, and we do that kind of work for you, including developing the competency model. Thank you, AI, because that has helped tremendously to get us about 70 to 80% of the way there. And then we just use our experience and the ability of just having working knowledge around competencies to be able to fine tune that and work with our clients. But our customer service approach at eSkill and at SkillDirector has always been customer should have a good experience in working with us. And yeah, it's technology, but we want to do most of the heavy lifting so that you can see the benefit of it.
Yeah, the heavy lifting both at the strategic change management level as well as the implementation of the models. Really good. So if you go back to that almost second to last slide and you just think about the eSkill partnership with SkillDirector. So eSkill has some unique positioning in the market, and so does SkillDirector. What do you think are the things that make each of them stand out versus other solutions that are out there?
Good question. So on the eSkill side, there are probably three things that stand out more than anything else. One is customer service. The team, the client success managers and the AE team at eSkill is they're very good at being able to support their clients. They do. I've seen that team stay up all night trying to get something done because they knew someone needed it the next day. So that's number one. Number two for eSkill is the content library. The content library is unmatched in the industry. You can go to any other competitor and they might have 1/10 of the content already developed that eSkill does. Okay, and the third thing is configurability. So eSkill has a platform that is designed to be configurable. It is designed to be able to put together a skills test so that you have a good candidate experience. So that company can be just as competitive as a bigger or smaller company and just as nimble. And that's what the platform does. So customer service, content library, and the configurability of the platform. So that's on the eSkill side. On the SkillDirector,
at eSkill, you're not going to be stuck in a queue waiting for somebody to get back to you. Your client success manager is going to get back with you with compassionate caring at any point right away and help you keep moving. They're really your partner in this.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, the team is really exceptional. And then on the SkillDirector side, SkillDirector is operationally a hub. So it houses the assessment information, but then also creates an actionable next step. So whereas we assess with eSkills knowledge, then we have an actionable next step with SkillDirector is now that I know where I am, what now? All right. So instead of going in through an entire sea of learning opportunities, I'm actually pointed to here are the learning opportunities that can help you improve this skill. So in doing that, that just helps the individual as eSkill helps the candidate get through the process, the screening process on the front end. That same kind of methodology can be applied for, okay, now that we've assessed them on the pre-hire or the post-hire side and the development side, I can now see where my gaps are, and now I can be directed to the learning that I need for closing that gap. Right, so two really exceptional.
The incredible thing about SkillDirector is that the whole process makes it easy to assess lots of team members at the same time, right?
Right, exactly. And it's always interesting to me is how people do that now is even with 100 people, if you sat down with each individual and you looked over their skills assessment and tried to understand where their skills were today and how to create an individual development plan, oftentimes organizations reserve that for high potentials or managers, leaving everyone else to sort of fend for themselves, right? So with SkillDirector, you can do massive numbers of assessments all at one time. Right, and so that's the really nice part of being able to create personalized learning development plans for each individual in your organization, not just for a select few.
Well, Kelly, thank you so much for your time. We're running a little bit long, so we need to wrap this up, but thank you for all of the questions. We encourage you, if you're an existing eSkill or SkillDirector client, to talk to your client success manager about how you can extend what you're currently doing and improve by implementing reskilling and upskilling. If you are new to eSkill or SkillDirector, we encourage you to go to either website, eskill.com or skilldirector.com, and just reach out. We're excited to talk to you about your current situation and how we can help you improve. Thank you, Kelly, for your time today. Everyone, have a great day.